Hey everybody, Joseph Rothschild here, aka
Attorney at Law.
And we are back with another Twitter thread. So today I want to talk about competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! And I know you all are just going to post memes anyway. But for a lot of players, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is so impermeable that it's difficult to tell if you're getting good or not. And one of the most important parts of improving is receiving a lot of really unintuitive advice. So today I'm asking you, for people who have improved in the past and are looking to further, what was the most important lesson you ever had to learn? And I'm beginning with an easy one. This is the hypergeometric calculator. It calculates the probability of finding an individual card in your opening hand, and it's extremely important that you play around with this thing at least a little bit when deciding on ratios instead of just going based off vibes. So let's see what you all came up with. Understanding the importance of side decking. No, really good. It seems weird to hammer this point home, but in a best of 3, most of your games will include side decks. Knowing what cards to put in and what cards to take out against certain matchups is an easy task, but most players mess up on this essential skill. A lot of people think, oh, against X matchup, I'll bring in Y card, and that's the extent of the side decking that I have to interact with. But you have to understand, a majority of your games are going to be against opponents who have blowouts that beat your entire strategy available to them. How are you going to negotiate those games? No matter how much you love a specific deck or archetype, every deck is a power ceiling. You can be the best player in the world. That doesn't mean your pet deck is going to be able to clear top level events reliably. Picture unrelated. Oh man, Hero can do it. You just gotta want it more. JJPM says, knowing when a game is worth playing out if the opponent goes first in game 1. It's a skill that's so crucial in being able to win game 2 or even the match. It forces your opponent to guess what deck you are on and avoid losing a time, and it's done often with rogue players. I hate to do this to you. I think the opposite skill is actually much more important to cultivate. Yu-Gi-Oh! Players are very bad at understanding what games are winnable. I think that a significant amount of games that people scoop because it will hide information from their opponent are completely winnable. And I think hiding information from an opponent in terms of deck archetype is actually not particularly important. Callie says, stop focusing on spicy techs and deck building and just playing better. I see this constantly, especially in archetype discords. Everyone wants to be the 6,000 IQ Giga Chad who snatches wins with weird tech cards when the reality is that play is more important than deck building. Do not play for the deck profile. When playing a strategy, you are playing for the top. You are not playing for the video resulting from the top, where you can go, I played this, it was crazy. Dire says, being good at one deck isn't a substitute for being a good player. You should grow your game sense understanding and how to play Yu-Gi-Oh! As a whole, rather than improving with a specific deck. Improvements with a specific deck are still important, but not as important as you improving. Legitimately true. Dire says, aren't you the generator player though? Yeah, and only playing generator, nothing else made me a bad player. When I realized this, I played with other decks I wasn't familiar with, so I couldn't rely on my understanding of the deck to win, and I had to win through my gameplay. It is so important to be good at Yu-Gi-Oh! Rather than good at a deck. Like, it will further your ability to be good at a deck as well. Jesse says, don't fixate on synergies. What the fuck does this mean? What does this mean? I plan on making a video about, oh, it's just an ad for a Jesse video. E3 says, information/game knowledge goes a long way. If your opponent doesn't know what your deck does, there's almost a whole tier boost worth of advantage. Same goes if you don't know what your opponent's deck does. This is absolutely true. Like, it is so important to have an understanding of what your opponent's strategy is, especially in old formats like Edison, in which you just may not know what their end game is. Dimax with the #1 most correct answer: review your losses. A lot of people will take a fat L and just say, oh, well, I got sacked, and then just move on. Was there nothing you could have done? Was there a line you didn't see? There's more stuff tweets can't fit, but go over your games and lab out stuff you aren't 100% on. It is so important to do this. Probably the absolute most important piece of advice I can impart to you is the games where someone flipped a floodgate and you just lost because of it are often quite winnable. Sarah says, be willing to go above 40 cards. This is a kind of recent development in deck building. Sometimes you have to value a breadth of options over consistency in a linear game plan that might not have the flexibility needed to address the entire metagame. Rescue Ace in particular taught me the value of going to 45 and 50. A lot of decks these days have a huge package of cards that are searched over the course of the combo you don't really want to add to your hand in an opener, and a lot of decks these days don't have as much room for non-engine as you would want to board in and out cleanly. GCD says, learn how to test properly. Correct. Teach your test partners when to interrupt you. Play for those optimal interrupts. Play out different lines from different points to see if there was a better play. See what your deck loses to and actually implement changes from this. I remember testing in college, and some of the individuals I would test with, when we would make a mistake, they'd go, no, in a real tournament, you wouldn't be able to take back. We press on. Don't do that. Then you're playing a non-game as a result of a mistake you can't rely on your opponent to make. As someone who's ever really played online Yu-Gi-Oh!, learn the tells of an automatic simulator. This is a great answer. It can be a response delay for chainable hand traps or knowing when your interaction has caused them to have to rethink their combo. Do not treat priority passing as time to zone out. It's unbelievable how little people value this skill in Master Duel specifically. I have won and lost tournament games based on being better than my opponent at toggling. Vi says play to your outs and focus on playing perfectly after you misplay. That's 100% correct. Many people notice they've made one mistake and immediately give up. It's an issue I have, but if you keep fighting, you make the game complicated and give a chance to come back. The absolute worst thing that I used to do is if I didn't get a droll off at the optimal opportunity, the first time my opponent added a card to the hand, maybe I just blanked or something, I wouldn't activate it for the rest of the turn because I didn't want to look stupid for drolling after they've already added. But if something like that happens, you just kind of have to roll with the punches. That card is probably still killer in that matchup. You don't win games by making your opponent think you are smart. So a lot of the times, like Yu-Gi-Oh is a super complex game, you are going to misplay, you are going to make the wrong decision, but a lot of times the strength of your hand and the strength of your engine over your opponents will permit you to win those games regardless, and you need to be taking those. Gabe Vargas says find and make the winning play and avoid the play that just keeps you from losing. This requires knowledge, foresight, and most importantly, luck. This is a unbelievably good answer. Frequently, individuals will make a safer but lower impact play as a result of an understanding that an opponent must have X or Y, when in reality they should be making more high risk plays because they have the potential to actually put them in a winning position rather than just get to a turn where your single play is going to get negated or destroyed anyway. Learn to evaluate cards based on the end result instead of the text on the card. You'll tilt far too often and you get upset at every floodgate you see. Take a moment to evaluate it as if it were any similar disruption. Chances are you probably still lose to half those cards. Floodgates in particular cause Yu-Gi-Oh players to revert to the Cro-Magnon caveman brain more than any other series of cards. Frequently, people will look at a flipped up copy of Anti-Spell Fragrance in a hand that has 2 spells and go, oh god, no, how could you? But like, if one of those cards was going to be pitched to a Dia Bellstar and the other one was going to be ashed, like that's the exact same position, right? A lesson I'm trying to learn, honestly, being graceful in defeat. I'm an incredibly sore loser at times. I can get really toxic if I lose to floodgates, sacking, or custom hands. It leads to me not being fun to play or test with. I'm going to be honest with you, sacking, floodgates, and custom hands are totally uncompetitive concepts. So many people use them as just like thought-terminating cliches that as soon as they come down or as soon as your opponent's hand is more powerful than yours, you just get to write off any mistake that you make, any deck building possibility that you had, and just say, well, what was I going to do? I don't know. What were you going to do? You're going to have to figure that out because you're going to be in that position again a lot. Every single action reveals information to you. Opponent takes time to normal summon their starter. They probably have a choice to make, so you know one of their remaining 4 is an alternative starting play to that normal summon. Similarly, you should be trying at all times to obfuscate what's in your hand. Definitely, like, you don't have to output the highest ceiling possible for your deck if a lower one does the similar but loses less. Ugh, so many people watch combo videos that are essentially, what if I was playing against nothing and no one, and like put up 15 negates. The Snake Eyes was really bad for this because an uninterrupted Snake Eye combo can do cold fusion, but I don't think has ever happened ever. Halfmiss says, don't just slam your head against the wall and jam infinite random games when testing. Sit down and work through scenarios. Does X starter beat X hand trap? Does this set of cards I often open beat this deck's end board, etc.? Yes, playing games helps, but so does theory. It is, of course, very important to play games with your deck. It's super, super relevant to be able to develop the kind of game sense necessary to understand where your position in each game is. But it's also important to just think. Like, sit down, don't open up a simulator, just think in your head, how is executing this going to beat Y? What can I expect in Z? Ultimately, improving in Yu-Gi-Oh is very hard. It's not surprising that a lot of the lessons that make you better are unintuitive, make no sense at first, or seem strange, but I promise you, you will come out the other end a more confident, more capable, and more adaptable player. Now let me introduce you to Sun Tzu's The Art of War. I don't like this answer, but this picture goes hard.